Good afternoon, team. It is 12 o'clock on the dot, and it is time to start our webinar for this month. And we've got folks coming in from all over the country, which is brilliant. Good to see you out there. We're going to be chatting to you today about leadership. Leadership, it's one of those topics I think that some people are interested in and some people aren't, but everybody should be. Hey.
Oh, definitely. And I think you've got to look at it. It's just not a numbers thing. What we've recognized and what we do here with our clients is that if you don't look at the overall person, then the little bits that need working on become really difficult to work on. So leadership's that top of the tree thing.
Cool, brilliant. So what we're going to do today, folks, I'm going to share my screen with you because we've got some visuals to run you through today. So aside from seeing our smiling faces, you'll see some visuals as we go through. As we go through the content today, I'll be kind of interviewing Craig and asking him some questions as we go through so that you can get a feel for what his experience has been on his leadership journey with his team, and also throwing in some additional examples from folks that we've worked with along the way. So here we go. Let me share really quickly. And let me get our PowerPoint. Okay, so this is one thing. Brilliant. Leadership is influence. So we're part of the International John Maxwell Leadership Team with folks all over the world who practice leadership coaching, leadership training, and development. And John Maxwell's definition of leadership is that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So that's the take, and that's the definition that we're using of leadership as we go through this session today. So ultimately, when you have that ability to influence, you can enjoy better relationships with your team members and with your patients. So we are Generate Business and Life Solutions. We specialize in working with people like yourselves, with folks who are in the dental and medical industries and offices all over New Zealand. So that's who we are. And sitting next to me is Craig Yarndley. So Craig, instead of reading this, right, people can sit there and read that. Say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm one of those that hate PowerPoints that people read off. So hopefully Jennifer doesn't do that today. Look, I'm a chartered accountant, been here for 25 years, started off purely numbers based, but realistically, while I like numbers, I actually like making a difference in the lives of those who I work with. And where I make the difference is when I combine the numbers with leadership, with focusing on the person. So that's partly why when we rebranded 3-4 years ago, we renamed ourselves Generate Business and Life Solutions because they go hand in hand. And so part of that journey has taken me to the United States to be part of the John Maxwell team. Jennifer's joined along the way. And we have so much material, so much love coming back through the leadership stuff we've got that we just want to get out and impart that knowledge to others.
Cool, thank you for that. And yeah, there's me. So basically, I'm from the States. So Craig goes back to my neck of the woods for training, and now I have the opportunity to go back and do that over the past few years, that ongoing learning with the Maxwell team. So yeah, my mission in life basically is to have a positive impact on as many people as I possibly can. So my role here at Generate is to coach, to train, and to go out and conduct speaking engagements and basically spread the word about what we do and how we help our clients. And so that really kind of ticks all the boxes for me and helps me live out my mission every day. So sitting here today, being able to address all of you who are out there around the country with really great information is so much fun. I enjoy it. So hopefully that comes through in the session today, and you'll take away something that you can really find useful that you can apply with your team and with your patients. So what do? I know you've been hearing from us for a long time now through some emails. You might have hopped on a webinar or two over the past few months. But who are we and what do we really do? So I figured it was really time to clarify that. So what we do is we work with our clients on strategy. Now, what does strategy mean? We help you clarify what it is you really want from your practice, what you want it to do for you, your patients, your team moving forward. So what can that look like? Strategy can look like a goal setting session, right? Really meaty, getting down to the nitty gritty of what you want from your practice. It can look like swatting your practice, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It can look like creating a proper business plan, right, that you actually use for your practice to help you go forward and give you a bit of a roadmap. We do planning. So one of the biggest gaps that we see with clients is between knowing and doing.
Or thinking they know and thinking they're doing.
Thinking they're doing, but they're just being busy. Yes.
I just had clients in this morning, you know, you ask them a question and they think they know the answer. And when they go away, they find out, actually, we didn't know the answer. We didn't. And yes, it's a numbers-based question we talked about this morning. But when you think something and it's not right, it's really hard to manage.
It has ripple effects, and it
Very
affects
much
everything
so.
else in your business, right? So when we think about planning, what can that look like, right? Helping you to put goals into practice. It can look like identifying key projects and KPIs for you. It can look like creating training and development plans for your team. And it can look like setting targets and creating marketing plans. So there's heaps of different things that how this manifests, but it's basically helping you put thought into action. So the next thing we do for clients is we help them with growth. So consistent, profitable growth is and can be a challenge. One of the some research reports that I've read around the dental industry and the medical industry here in New Zealand specifically state that growth, sustainable growth, is something that is one of the primary concerns, because we all know there's attrition, patient attrition, right? So how do you ensure that you've got enough people coming through the front door and you're locking the back door so that you're losing as few of them as possible, but you're retaining and giving those that you do bring in a great experience and doing it in a profitable way? So what can that look like? That can look like really getting clear about your target market and who your ideal patient is, who you want to serve, opportunities for growth, whether that's expansion, whether that's serving a new or a different market, opening another location. It looks like setting targets, and it could be also identifying your ideal team size. So what does that growth look like? That's what we're here to help you with. And the final thing that we do is exit. What does exit mean? When it's time to step away from the examination room, from the chair, what's next? So when your time has come to the end in this particular practice, what do you want to move on to next? Is it succession, selling on to a younger person? Is it setting up your next business venture? Is it, what are your options? Is it sailing away into the sunset on a yacht and doing a cruise around the world? I have no idea, but working with you to sort out what the options are and how they'll affect you is key. Communication planning as well for your team, for your patients, to let them know what's going on and what's coming for them next so they can have a level of comfort.
And exit isn't necessarily an exit into a box. And I've had two clients this morning just in conversation. They're in their 50s and we're saying with them, working alongside them to say, where to next? What are we going to do? What does retirement look like? Retirement might be 15 years away, but you need the time between now and then to set what you're going to do. So when you get to that point, it happens. Otherwise, you'll end up in trouble.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. So how do we do that? Basically, how we accomplish those four things is firstly by building a relationship with our clients. So everything revolves around getting to know you, your practice, your team, what your goals are, what you really want, so that we can identify the best way to help you move forward and do the things you want to do. The second way is through education. Now, education meaning targeted, customized training for you and your team, that one-to-one coaching, things that can really have an immediate positive impact on not only you and your practice, but on your life and those people around you who aren't necessarily workmates, right? So that education, that business in life come into play here.
And you've got to remember, a lot of people think education stops at the school door. So when you leave school, education stops. You can't be further from the truth. You're going to be educating yourself, or you should be educating yourself right through the last day that you take a breath.
So if you're someone who is a proactive, thirsty person who's always looking for a better way to do things and a better way to move through life, then you're always going to be accessing knowledge wherever you can find it. So that's partially where we come into play. We have heaps of resources that we share with our clients. So the last way that we accomplish that is through providing resources. So the relationship that we have not only through the John Maxwell team, but also with our own team, right, in-house, and with those professionals that we've handpicked around the country to help our clients in areas like health and safety, human resources, investing, finance. Those people are our extended team that we connect with our clients when it's appropriate. So we have those relationships in place, and through us, you can access that. So we really try to provide you with everything you need to move forward powerfully. Now, why Generate? Well, a number of reasons. We think we're actually really good at what we do. We know we're really good at what we do, but we have to prove that to you, right? So here's a couple little points about what sets us apart, I suppose, from other places that you could possibly work with, right? So Generate business and life solutions. We take that numbers plus people-based approach, which I think is brilliant. We are NZ-based professionals serving NZ professionals, right? We live where you live, we're here. And we know that the New Zealand market is a bit different from the Australian market. It's a bit different from the US market, right? I mean, there's things that are different about us and how we live and work than to other parts of the world. So we support our clients not just with business, but with people side. The John Maxwell relationship is brilliant, and it helps us bring in some of that really critical leadership and communication work, right? So we're certified DISC behavioral style specialists. That means that we can help your team understand how to communicate with each other even when they're not exactly alike. So that's another piece of what we do.
And how many of your team are alike?
I venture to say you've got one of everything on your team, right? Kind of like we do. So we're big enough to have a team of experts, but small enough to be able to customize what we do to what you need as a client. And hey, we utilize technology and we come to you. You don't have to travel to Auckland or go over to Oz to have things customized for you and to access what you need to access. So that's a little bit about why us. So what's on for today? We're going to cover, so these seminars that we put on, these webinars that we put on, we target an on-time start at 12, which happened. We aim to be finished before 1 o'clock. So this might, depending on the conversation today, it might end at 12:25, it might end at 12:40, and we might go all the way to 1, but we will be finished before 1 o'clock so you can get back into your day. So what we're covering today are 5 of our favorite leadership principles. If there's a little bit of Q&A, we can do that back and forth. We'll share what's in the webinar pipeline for next year, because we're going to continue to do these on a monthly basis moving forward after the holidays. We will take a little break. We've got a cool live event coming up in Hamilton in February that I will share with you the details of at the end of the webinar. And then, of course, how to get in touch with us if you have a question. So why should I bother learning about leadership? Craig?
Why shouldn't you bother at the end of the day? I mean, leadership is about connecting. As we said at the front, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I sat through, I'm a chairman of the local school board here at the college. We went through a leadership recruitment process, and we had 4 recruits that we were looking at interviewing yesterday, and it's all about how you connect with others, how you might lead others, how you might be led. It's part of our business fabric, whether you're in business to make money or whether you're in business to connect to others, like the teaching profession. So I think leadership is now a buzzword in the community. I think you see and hear more about leadership. For us, it's part of that big picture, and that's why we're focusing so much on it, because you're not going to grow unless you take leadership under consideration.
So when I talk to some people, though, about leadership, Craig, and if they're in a small practice or a small business, they'll say, oh, we know each other really well. We don't need to do leadership work. So how would you come back with that? Because it is really important, even if you know each other well.
I'm in a sort of small business where we've got 10 people based here in the office, and we think we know each other, but people have fronts. People have things that they might not necessarily display to others. And I think it's about, the more you learn about each other, the better you work as a team. And so leadership is about learning to work with each other. It's not about the person at the top of the chain, it's about everybody. Everybody has a role in leadership. Everybody leads somebody when you're talking about teamwork.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter what your role in an organization or a practice or a business is. No,
Not at all.
you can influence, right? Because we said leadership is influence. You can influence your peers who are on the same level as you. You can influence those you manage who are on a lower, slightly lower level. You can influence those who are on a level above you, right?
So, oh, exactly. I mean, I might be the boss here, I might be the owner, but there's stuff in our day-to-day roles that I don't have as much knowledge on. I've set the processes in place, but I don't actually do that work. So there's people who are doing that can show me, can lead me through what's happening if I need to find that information out.
Brilliant. So pretty much 90% or more of what we want to be, do, and have in life, we need other people to help us be, do, and have those things. Rarely does anyone achieve massive success on their own, right? It takes teamwork, and it takes the ability to work through other people. If you're going to successfully work through other people to accomplish goals, it means you need to be able to influence those people and get them on side and be aligned, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about leadership, even within a small team. So as we go through the topic today, I'm going to be bringing Craig in every so often, kind of share his experience with us as he's developed his leadership muscle over the past several years, and as he's brought that information to the team here at Generate, and kind of ask him to share how that's gone, because some of that might resonate with you as we go through. Okay, cool. So why should you bother? Lead alignment within your team, right? So we want to ensure that your team is aligned when it comes to the culture and your values. What do you all believe in as a team? How do you believe you should treat each other, and how you should treat your patients? What's your philosophy? Leading alignment when it comes to goals. What do you all want to accomplish together to take the business forward? And what do you want to be aligned with regards to patient care standards? So ensuring that everyone's on exactly the same page with not only what you're doing, but how you do it and how you're being while you do it. All takes alignment.
So while we've talked about lead alignment, one of the questions I asked all the candidates yesterday was Hitler a good leader? Yes or no? And interestingly, it's funny watching it because it was a question out of the blue. They weren't expecting it, but they all got the answer right. Hitler was a good leader. Mm-hmm. His lead alignment was spot on. Everybody was going where he wanted them to go. The culture, the goals, obviously patient care doesn't fit with Hitler, but realistically, everything that we just got on the PowerPoint there, Hitler got right, but the end result was bad. So you've just got to take that into your subconscious when you think about what good or bad leadership is. You can look at some good leadership that has bad outcomes. You can look at some good outcomes that is bad leadership.
Brilliant. So someone can be a good leader, but not particularly have the best intentions or get the best outcome. Yeah. So speaking of Hitler, recently just saw Jojo Rabbit, quite a good movie all about Hitler by Taika Waititi. So, and the relationship as he was an imaginary friend to a young boy who was involved in the war in Germany. So interesting. And it's he's one of those people that makes people go, Hitler, bad, right? Yeah. So it's interesting to have a conversation around him because yes, he was able to influence. It wasn't necessarily for good, but he was an influencer. So aligned teams get things done. One of the ways that we help our clients is to help them identify projects, right? Things that they need to accomplish in order to move forward in their practice. So it is easier to get things done when you've got a team that's aligned to what it is you're trying to accomplish, right? So aligned teams navigate more smoothly through change. Now change, really quickly, Craig, has been a constant at Generate for the past couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah. I don't know how good the video was in, but the old eye roll. I mean, change is part of life, but it's also a hard part of life. Not many people like change. Most people would prefer just to keep going the same way. But if you keep doing that, you get the same result. So navigating through change is about understanding who's been affected by it, where you want to get with the end result with change, and getting the people on the same page. Hard work, but boy, is it a positive outcome when you achieve it.
Brilliant. So team, I've got notes down here. So if you hear some paper rustling, I'm sorry, I can't really help that. It's next to my microphone. But I can't keep everything in my head because I'm getting old. So I have some notes I'm reading from. So better engaging with your patients, right? So if you've got a team that's aligned with your goals and your values and building their muscles with being able to influence and exert influence, they're going to better engage with your patients. And your patients then will have a better likelihood of implementing the treatment suggestions that you bring forward. It'll help foster those long-term relationships with them, because they're going to want to be involved with a practice that understands them, that takes the time to figure them out as human beings and to communicate and to connect with them on that human level. So all that in the end should lead to great word of mouth, referrals, right? Hey, I'm part of this practice down the road. These guys are great. I'm treated like a king every time I go in there, so you've got to go see them. So ultimately, that's the end goal of why you should bother, right? It affects not only you and your team, but it helps you deliver better outcomes for your patients, and it helps you grow.
So in terms of the John Maxwell leadership, I've been involved now since 2014, so it's a good 5 years. When I brought it back to New Zealand into the accounting firm, it was about changing me so I was a better leader. It was then about changing the team so they were better leaders. So then as Generate grew, the leadership functionality within Generate grew. I've actually got clients that recognise that the change from before I was at John Maxwell to now is quite dramatic, and they look forward to me coming back from my trip. So know when I go, what have you got new for us? Because I've developed it that in my day-to-day interaction from the accounting side, I impart what I've learned in leadership. But our next step is what we're doing with Jennifer and myself, is we are actually going out and doing leadership courses, leadership training, as opposed to it's just been a state of osmosis between myself and my clients at the moment. Yeah.
So taking that forward in a more formal way in 2020, which is exciting. So brilliant. So yeah, that's why you should bother. So ultimately, let's dive into principle number 1 that we want to share with you. So one of our favorites is from a book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And basically the principle says that my level of effectiveness is determined by my leadership ability. Now, there's a bit of a long-winded explanation that's coming about this, so stick with me. But basically the reason is because leadership is the ability to influence, full stop. If I'm stellar at being able to influence the people around me, then I'll be stellar at whatever it is I attempt to accomplish. If I'm still learning and I've got a few areas that are a little sketchy with regards to my own leadership development and my own ability to influence, then I'm not going to be as successful as I could be. So really, it's really simple. We have to start with ourselves. When we develop, as Craig was saying, I did it mostly for myself, and then I wanted to bring it back to the team. So it's identifying how you can implement these principles for yourself and then begin to share them with your team. They'll start to spill over, which kind of goes to the next slide that I'm going to pop to. There's an image on there that explains this concept, but it kind of starts with really simple things when you begin to work on yourself. They can be as simple as showing up on time with a smile, right? What happens when you smile at someone else?
It generally brings out a smile.
Absolutely. So, you know, what happens when you turn up on time? You bring a smile and you bring a great attitude. We all know how that one bad apple thing, right? So if one bad apple in the pot can spoil the whole thing. Well, one person with a great attitude can also spread a great attitude. So those are little things that you can begin to implement every day to help you begin to build your ability to influence. So let's flip over here really quickly. Now, the reason I've done a picture of a boiling pot of water is because the idea is that if you put a pot of cold water on the stove and you turn the heat up, what happens right away? Not much. You have to keep the heat on for quite a while to get a big pot of water to boil. Once that water starts to boil and the heat turns up in it, you start with little bubbles, and little bubbles begin to break the surface, and then the bubbles get bigger and bigger until eventually you've got a massive amount of steam coming off a pot of boiling water. Now, what happens when the water boils really vigorously? Does it boil out of the pot and land on whatever's around it, right? The stove, the burner, whatever it might be? Of course it does. Even if there's a lid on the pot, which I couldn't find a picture of a pot with a lid, but even if there's a lid on the pot, that steam can be strong enough that it lifts the lid on the pot and still allows the boil over of the water that's inside. And if there's potatoes in there or whatever, it's going to make a mess. But the point is that as you begin to learn, your leadership ability is the water in the pot. And as you begin to develop your abilities and exercise your leadership muscles, the water starts to move and starts to boil. And eventually, as you continue to develop yourself, the water boils over. And your example, how you are in your practice and with the people around you, begins to show and begins to boil over and to touch the people who are around you, kind of like the water boils out of the pot and lands on the stove. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm going to go a slightly different tack because I'm into that.
Mm-hmm.
One of John's messages in that book that we're talking about is the law of the lid. And the way I see it is same scenario here, but if you imagine the lid is held down as tightly as possible, so this your change within the pot is bubbling over, at some point that lid will cause you want to escape, because that lid is stopping you from bubbling over.
Yes.
And so you want to just get out of there. And this is where we're talking about the leadership in terms of where I came from. When I came back from Maxwell initially, I worked on myself because I knew that if I didn't change who I was and lifted who I was, bubbled away myself, then if I then push it to my team, then they'd have a lid. They'd have a block to their growth. So you've got to, you can probably think about people in your organization now that are annoyingly stopping you from being who you want to be. That's the law of the lid. They have got a leadership ability holding you down, and there's two ways to deal with that. One, you leave, and I'm not going to come here and say leave, but the other option is to improve the leadership ability of the person above you, and that will then help you move yours up.
And how do you do that? Through influence.
Through influence.
Right. So when you think about, if you're the practice manager, if you're the dentist, the doctor, the head honcho in your office, and your leadership ability is low at the moment, then let's say if you're on a scale of 1 to 10, if your own leadership ability sits at a 5, a 6, or a 7, it's going to be very difficult for you to manage successfully people on your team who might be at a higher leadership level or have done more personal development work.
Or wanting to get to a higher level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you will become the lid on their leadership development, right? Because your lid determines not only your own effectiveness, but the effectiveness of the people around you. So the higher you lift your lid, the quicker you blow the lid off your pot, the easier it is going to be to manage those folks who want to raise their own lids, but to also raise everybody around you. So it really has that flow over effect. Nice. Thanks for indulging that long-winded example. So our second principle, leaders develop daily, not in a day. So John Maxwell likes to call this one the law of process, because becoming a better leader and influencer takes daily focus and practice. So we don't believe in microwave leaders. So just like heading out to the ski fields here in New Zealand in the winter, and let's say you go take a ski lesson down at Wakapapa, Cornet Peak. Depends on what island you live on.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you're taking a ski lesson this weekend, are you going to be able to go join the New Zealand Olympic downhill ski team next year?
It depends on your ability.
Oh my gosh. After one lesson, you're amazing.
Hey, they may have a natural skill you don't know about, you know?
So unless you're incredibly naturally gifted, it is unlikely that after one lesson, you're going to be able to go away and join the NZ Olympic ski team. The same thing comes into play when it comes to your leadership ability. Attending one session with a leadership coach, attending one leadership workshop or retreat, or working through, one book with your team around the concepts of leadership isn't necessarily going to get you where you need to go. It is, as Craig has experienced, a years-long process. And that's not discouraging. That's actually really exciting, because the more you practice, the more you can share what you're learning with your team, and everybody benefits.
Yeah, and like I said, 5-year process for me, because I focus on myself first, then the team, and now we're going out to community. But this is a process that's going to keep going until the day, I use the words, terminology, till the day I step into my box. Yep, that's when it's going to stop.
Yep. because you get so much personal satisfaction from it
exactly.
and from sharing it.
And seeing other people grow. You know,
Yes.
I've got myself to a position now where I'm comfortable. I'll keep moving my lid up, but I'm helping people to work on their lid numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Family, clients, team members. It's everybody around you. Every relationship can benefit from this. So Craig, the team here, so for those of you out there who are thinking, all right, if I go away and I start learning about leadership principles and I start bringing them back into this team who never really have heard too much about this, they're going to think I'm a little wacky. How did you introduce what you were learning in the beginning 5 years ago? And I was here, but it's hard to remember. How did they receive you when you were first coming back with some of the stuff that you wanted them to begin thinking about? Because it's highly self-reflective, isn't it?
Very much so. And I think I'll use the word osmosis. I didn't come out and actively push it because of the type of personality I am, but also I felt I'd get a negative reaction. And so it was just about, on a day-to-day basis, that whole process we're talking about, just a little change. It's amazing how a lot of little changes can hit and become a big change over time. And I think the team could see that I was actively changing, and it was change for better. And so because they saw the change for better, they either got on board or they left. Now, people leaving can be, and probably is, a positive. So, you know, don't be afraid of people moving on, because it's about the team you keep with you and walk with you. And it's a whole influence thing. It's about identifying who you're working with, who you're dealing, how they read you, I guess, at the end of the day. And so initially, I think because I'd already built up a good relationship with my team, most of them came on board quite easily, you know, because I was already in this mode. John Maxwell just happened to be a more direct process than what I was capturing in the ethos before that. So all of the team that are with me today were with me when I took on the John Maxwell. All of the team have also grown in that time frame.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how have you noticed, like, what things are different, briefly, with the team members who have been through that entire process? Because there are some who are no longer here, and that's actually probably a good thing.
Yeah, and some are not. There's two reasons they're not here. One, they didn't buy into it. That's good, because there's no point being somewhere if you don't buy into it. Secondly, they're not here because we have assisted them in growing and then moving on to something better. Because we're an accounting firm in Te Awamutu, which is positive for many of us, but for others, they want to go further, and that's cool. If I can set a foundation for them to grow into where they want to go, they'll have a different direction to me at some point, then I think them moving on is fantastic. And I actually encourage it. Not that I'm wanting to keep people out, but I encourage people to go after their dreams. And so there's those two reasons why people move on.
There's a statistic that I saw recently that said 80% of leaders attract followers, 40% of leaders, I'm forgetting because I just looked at it last night. I'm already forgetting, but a very small percentage, 3 or 4%, develop other leaders. So 3 or 4% of existing leaders develop other leaders because they're secure enough, they're confident enough, and they want to develop other leaders so that those leaders can go develop other leaders. And it just makes for a much more productive business environment, much more happy team environment. There's so many benefits to that. So thanks for that. Thanks for sharing. Because it's not always easy to introduce something new to your team, especially when they're not used to thinking along those lines.
No, and personality profiling of the team as part of our process as well has shown that some of them are not great with change. They're worse than others. You know, if you rank them, they can be quite high. And because the accounting type of person is not a change type of person, it has been difficult. But then I think it's been easier it would have been more difficult had we not had all this learning in the way and behind the scenes, and also had I not taken the time, you know. And it's about just letting the foundation build so that when you actually jump off, you've got a solid foot.
Cool, good. So principle number 3, team, connecting increases your influence, also known as your leadership ability, in every situation. Now, this comes from a book called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And basically the idea here is that you, as the leader of your team, need to connect with people in order to be able to influence them. Now, that doesn't mean surface connections. Hey, how you doing? You're acquainted. but that means that you really get to dig in and know who each person on your team really is, what drives them, what motivates them, what they want to accomplish, what their goals are as individuals, so that when they're on your team, not only are they helping your business and your practice and your team move forward, but they're getting something for themselves as well, right? They're developing themselves and going where they want to go. So when you really connect with someone, that means that you're tapping into that connection on a human or an emotional level, which is difficult for some personality types and harder for some than others, because some people are people and some people are task people. So with some of that work that we do, it proves to be challenging for some leaders to connect on that really emotional or human level.
And I think the generation coming into the workforce now is more focused on that touchy-feely stuff. You know, I'm old enough that I'm in that not quite baby boomers generation, but the guys coming through, Gen X, for good or for bad. But effectively, the generation coming through now, they want to have that connectivity. You know, people talk about that there's more fluidity in people moving jobs, but they can also be just as loyal and stay with you forever if you can connect with them.
This is true. So, you know, another thing that we know is that people don't leave practices, they leave leaders. So if you, as the leader of your practice, are connecting with your team, you've got a much better chance of having some really good longevity within your team and keeping that stable team, which is better for everyone. It's better for your patients because they've got that stability as well. So it has benefits all the way around, because ultimately our teams and our patients want to know that A, we care about them, B, we can help them, and C, they can trust us as leaders. So if you're trustworthy, if you show your team that you care about them and you help them on a regular basis and show them how you can help them, that goes a long way to building that connection with your team. A little quick case study here. So there was a client who I worked with for a long time who had owned his business for about 15 years with a team of about 8 or 9, and had been doing things kind of the same way for a long period of time, was successful, but wasn't really successful in hitting the goals that he really wanted to achieve. So after having a chat with him about how he managed his management, his leadership style, it came to light that he was pretty darn autocratic. It was my way or the highway, which is why this picture's up here on the screen. So when but he was a very nice guy. So I sat down and had a chat with him about how to get, and he was concerned about getting better results out of his team, right? Some were sullen, insubordinate, coming in late regularly, calling off sick, heaps of things that just weren't acceptable and were hindering his results. So when we had a discussion around connecting with his team, I provided him with a tool called the Leaders Toolkit, which is something we use with our clients. And it's a very structured and formal way, which worked well for him, to get to know each team member and to connect with them one-to-one. So as we went through that and he kind of saw what we were getting at, and he realized that that was going to be helpful for him, he gave it a go. So he ended up doing one-to-one catch-ups with his team on a regular basis, each team member one-to-one, not anything tied to, you know, pay raises or anything like that. It was just a regular catch-up so they could connect on a human level. Was this easy for him? No, he was a very task-based person, not necessarily a people person, but interesting things started to happen once they started doing that. Yeah. Teams started turning up on time. People were less grumpy with each other. They felt heard and listened to. And he had a couple of team members who really stepped into their abilities and became stars. And he hit financial goals, which is the end-to-end result that he'd always wanted to hit and knew he could, but just didn't know how to do it. And the key for him was that leadership ability of connecting with his team. Yeah. So it was really interesting, really interesting. So next point, principle number 4, people do what people see. Is this the old monkey see, monkey do thing? Yeah. Not that people are monkeys, not that your team are monkeys, but people do what people see. You've got a platform, even if you think you don't, right? Social media is so prevalent these days that you are influencing people whether you realize it or not. You've got people that look up to you in different situations, whether you realize it or not. They follow your leadership. They follow your voice. They follow what you say. Do your words match your actions is the question. So we've got the ability to shape the way other people think and respond to life and to different situations. And sociologists tell us that each person, the average person, is going to end up influencing 10,000 people at least over the course of their lifetime. That's massive. Now, these are people you don't even really know. They could be parents at your kid's school who you kind of interact with on a surface basis, on a daily basis, right? A little surfacey relationship. They could be people who go to the gym with you and they're in your same exercise class that watch you. They could be, people who follow you or your practice on social media. You don't even know where they are, right? They could be the checkout person at the grocery store that you see every time you go in, right? I've got a New World that's about 5 minutes from my house, and I swear I know everybody's face in there. I don't know everybody's name, but everybody's so familiar. They do a great job at leadership because they've got a really stable team, right? But everybody in there is familiar. They know me when I come through, and it's just like people like that are watching you. So whether you know it or not, you're influencing heaps and heaps of people. The question becomes, are you worthy of followers?
Yeah, leadership, influence. I mean, can't say any more to that. But what I will want to come back a step to is, people do what people see. I've had a client for a period now who always tells me of their intent. And I got to a point I said, I don't care about your intent, I care about your actions. Because just because you have good intent, if you don't do it, it's a wasted action. Because if you don't do it, it's not seen. And so therefore people can't copy it or win by being connected to it. So yeah, get rid of your intents. Intents are good when they become actions, but they're useless unless they get to that point.
Yes. Intention versus action. So you as the leader or one of the leaders on your team need to be aware of the example that you're setting for your team because they're watching you. And I love cats, right? So I figured that was a cute picture to use. But your team watches how you work, how often you take breaks, what time you come in and what time you leave, how you treat patients, how you communicate with people on the phone, how you communicate with your family and others who you interact with when they see you. They're watching absolutely everything, and they're picking up clues from that. So are your work practices things that you want your team to emulate? So if they were to emulate you, how would you grade them?
Well, in my case, depends who you're talking to. I mean, if you talk to my wife, she's very much more a people person than I am. And she would say being task orientated, no way she wants to follow that. But in my environment at work, being an accounting firm, being task orientated has more of a bonus than being people orientated. So emulating down that track. But I've had to change. I am now more people orientated than I ever used to be because it's part of what you need to do. You need to be prepared to change in whatever you do to get the end result you're after.
So when you're trying to model behavior for your team, a couple of things, if you follow for yourself, we'll never steer you wrong. And one of those is a constant desire for personal and professional growth. Always setting that example of how can we do things better? How can I be better at who I am being and what I am doing within this practice? So if you're setting the standard being, you know what, this is what we do as a team. We do professional development. We do personal development. We develop our leadership skills, our communication skills. That's just part of our culture. And caring for your people. So if you show that you care about your people, then that's something that will, again, it's kind of like that law of the lid that flows around to the people who are around you. When you model that, when you walk in and say a nice warm hello to everybody every morning, and say, thanks, I appreciate you. I appreciate the contribution you make to this practice. I appreciate how you treat our patients and that you exemplify our practice philosophy. I appreciate the hard work that you do behind the scenes when nobody ever says thank you. I want to say thank you. So there's so many different things and different ways that you can show your team that you care, that all flows into you becoming more influential, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, paper shuffling, sorry. The fifth principle that we wanted to share with you is you must sharpen the axe. So Abraham Lincoln was once quoted as saying, as we've all heard, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening my axe. So this kind of goes back to that leaders are created daily, not in a day. So this takes practice. An axe is a strength multiplier, just like your leadership ability is an effectiveness multiplier. So when we think about the fact that leaders aren't made in a day, they're made daily, there's an entire topic we could talk about around daily success habits. But there's a couple things that I wanted to leave you with today on this principle that you can do to help you become more effective with your ability to influence and to kind of begin flexing those muscles. So how do I do that? You say, how do I do that? How do I sharpen my axe? One of the ways you can do that is to ask yourself 3 questions at the end of every day. One is, what went right? The next one is, what went wrong? And the third is, what can I do differently tomorrow? So why would we want to ask ourselves these questions at the end of the day, Craig?
Because it sets you up for the next day. Basically, a reflection of today will give you a starting point for tomorrow.
So if you're looking at what went well, you can celebrate success, you can note, and I would suggest when you ask yourself these 3 questions, use a journal, right? And keep the answers to these in a journal, because you can record what you did right and come back to that in future to say, sweet, you know, what practices do I know work and how do I ensure that I have a productive day? Oh, sweet, let me look back at my notes, because sometimes we forget what things work, don't we? So what went right? What went wrong? We learn so much from what could have gone better, right? So it's being honest with ourselves around what didn't go as we wanted it to, and how can we change that moving forward? Is there something I can do to make that work?
And just be aware, it's human nature to ignore, forget, put to one side what went wrong.
Yep.
You don't like to be reminded that something went wrong. You like to think of the good stuff. John's got another good book out there called Failing Forward. It's about bouncing off your failures towards better wins. So it's really important that you don't just focus on what went right, because some of your biggest learnings are going to be in what went wrong.
Brilliant. So it's not a failure, it's an opportunity to learn. What can you do differently tomorrow? How do I do that? There's more tips here. Choose one person every day to add value to. Now, what do we mean by adding value? Share knowledge. Right? If you know this person is someone who's a little bit newer on your team, or could use some more development, or could use to expand their skills in any number of areas, communication, leadership, technical skills, whatever it might be, share a little bit with them every day and make sure that you're sharing what you know. Another way that you can help is, how can I help you today, right? Providing actual support to someone else on your team. What do you need? How can I help you today? Sometimes they're going to look at you and go, I don't need anything, or I don't know. And fair enough. You know, you're putting yourself out there and showing them that you're wanting to add value to them by saying, how can I help you? And another thing is to provide resources and training. So not only sharing what you know and what's in your head, but connecting them with courses, with coaches, with people who can provide them with books, resources, videos. There's heaps of ways that you can provide resources to your team to help them upskill in a heap of different areas. We just had a conversation about this the other day with a subscription that Generate has to a series of webinars, right, around some of the financial stuff that we deal with. And I think the team sometimes gets so busy that they don't share that information with each other. And so we reminded ourselves that, yeah, we've got this great subscription and these topics come through that everyone on the team can benefit from at some point. Share out those links and just allow people to go access that and just be that resource provider. And again, using your manners, being polite, doing things that sometimes go by the wayside when we get busy can be a great way to add value to someone else. Walk around, say good morning, say hello, make sure to say please and thank you. Tell people that you appreciate them, right? And be genuine. So another way you can do that is through working with someone like us to grow yourself. I already mentioned that we said we do the Leaders Toolkit, which is a really great structured opportunity to really go through and learn about each one of your team members and kind of what makes them tick. Mastermind participation. right? Working through learning materials with your team in a structured way, accessing leadership coaching, working through leadership impact report, which says, okay, with the way you're wired and how you communicate, how does that affect what kind of a leader you are? So there are different tools and resources that we can bring to bear for our clients that help you grow yourself. You can grow your people, right? Through things like the leadership game. That is a totally unique leadership development and culture diagnostic tool. That was a mouthful, that we've got available to us. I've never seen anything like it. It's absolutely fantastic. So working through understanding how you communicate and how you're wired through DISC. Again, taking that team through the mastermind participation and working through learning materials together to discuss them and self-reflect, and going through and actually accessing leadership training for that entire team. Ultimately, we want you to grow your practice through this stuff. So it's you, your team, and your practice, which gives you clarity, helps your team be aligned, provides the team with energy and motivation to go forward because everybody knows what we're working towards and that we are working and being better, and helps provide better patient relationships. So ultimately, that's how you begin to take steps to grow into this leadership space.
Cool. So before you jump into that, I want to come back to this sharpening axe scenario. You know, an axe will not sharpen by swinging it round through the air. It needs a sharpening stone. It needs that external force to sharpen. Just remember that. It may not be us, but it needs to be somebody or someone external to you to sharpen yourself.
Absolutely. Because sometimes you can start down a path and get waylaid. Go, I'm going to do that next year. We're going to create a leadership and development training program for the team. And you start off in January and February, you're great, and then you kind of fall off the wagon. So having someone there to say, sweet, let's carry on. This is what we're working on next is really helpful. And as Craig said, whether that's us or not, doesn't matter, access someone. So what have we got coming for next year? I promised you we'd look ahead really quickly at webinars that we've got coming up. So February, March, and April, strategy in February. It's the beginning of the year. It's time to really make sure that you're clear on what you want to accomplish. Running through a quick little SWOT, setting some financial targets. March, planning. So breaking down your strategy into realistic projects. Understanding how to delegate so that stuff gets done among the team, and a few time management tips. We know that you guys are very, very busy, and you've got heaps of fires to put out and lots of people wanting a piece of you. So time management tips can be really, really helpful. April, we're going to talk about growth. So how do you make your growth sustainable through sensible marketing activity, making sure that you're remaining profitable, all that good stuff. So that's what's coming up. These webinars will remain free and they'll remain at lunchtime. So they should, unless we hear otherwise that a different time works better for you guys. But they will remain free. So feel free to log on to any of them that strike your fancy and catch your interest. And we've got a live event coming up in February 27th in the evening. It will be in Hamilton. So if you are anywhere in the middle of the North Island or you've got an easy flight into the Hamilton airport, we're going to be talking through with one of our extended team members from Practice Safe, Karen Turanga, mental health and resilience. So for the dental industry, this will be CPD available, which is great. For the rest of the medical field, it's going to be great information about how to identify folks who might be kind of heading into a bit of, having a mental health issue, what you can do about it, and how do you recognize those things in yourself and what can you do to remain resilient and spread some resilience tips among your team so that hopefully you don't become that 1 in 4. So that has been us for the day, team. If you've got any questions, I'm going to stop sharing here in just a second. If you've got any questions, feel free to type them into the question field for us and we'll answer those for you really quickly. But that's how you can reach us and get a hold of us if you've got any questions whatsoever about what we do or how we can help. So do I have any questions over here yet? No, I don't. Team, thanks, Craig.
Yeah, no problem. And we've got to get out of here by 1. It's 5:02. Gives you a chance to toilet stop before you get back into work. So
we did great.
Yep.
Have a great day. We'll see you in February. Happy holidays. But I'll send you a little Christmas email before then.
Cheers.
Hi, Jen Myers here. I hope you enjoyed that video and it got you thinking about how to implement that topic into your practice. If you have any questions whatsoever, myself or Craig, we are more than happy to answer questions for you and help you understand how to apply what you've just watched and what you've just heard into your specific practice in your unique situation. So please click the button that says book a meeting, and we are more than happy to spend a few minutes with you going through the information and how you can apply it. So thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.